In the final minutes of her shift, Detective Alana Brooks received a memo slipped under her office door. It wasn't official. No signature, no letterhead, just 12 words. Effective immediately. Your position is under review. Access has been restricted. It didn't explain why. It didn't need to. 2 weeks earlier, Alana had submitted an internal report questioning a string of recent promotions. 5 officers, all with ties to the same command circle. One had made a generous donation at a department fundraiser. She hadn't accused anyone. She'd asked a question. But in her world, asking the wrong question was as bold as taking sides in a quiet war. She packed her things in silence, left her badge on the desk, and walked out through a side door used mostly by janitors and night staff. The hallway seemed longer that day, lined with eyes that looked through her. Some colleagues nodded politely. Others just tightened their lips. She didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to explain. That night, Alana didn't call her mother. She didn't post anything online. She didn't even cry. Instead, she sat alone in her apartment, holding the department-issued notebook that still had her oath of service scrawled on the first page. Somewhere between discipline and hope, she had believed that being truthful could still work. But today, that truth had erased her from the system she once swore to defend. A few days later, a video made its way out of the building. In it, Alana stood at a closed-door review, surrounded by senior staff. Her voice was steady. If this badge means something, it shouldn't be passed like a business card. And if speaking up about that is treated like betrayal, then we've mistaken silence for loyalty. The clip circulated in small circles. It wasn't trending. It didn't make headlines. But someone important saw it. On Sunday, at a modest church in Harlem, Alana sat in the last pew, hood drawn up, eyes fixed forward. The sermon was finishing when a woman sat beside her. Neat charcoal blazer, no perfume, calm, alert presence. "Ms. Brooks," she said gently, "I'm not here to ask what happened. I saw what you did. You held your ground." She slid a card across the bench. It read, "Special Agent Olivia Niles, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Alana glanced at the card, then at the woman. Her body stayed still, but something in her shoulders loosened. The agent leaned closer. "They cut you out of the loop. What we're offering is a way back in with purpose. There were no grand pitches, no threats, no rewards promised. Just a pause, a space to decide." And in that stillness, Alana found clarity. She had lost her place in the department, but not her voice. What came next wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be fast, but it would be heard. Detective Alana Brooks didn't answer right away. After the church emptied, she stood quietly outside the brick steps, watching the city breathe under a cloudless sky. Agent Niles had left as quickly as she arrived, offering no pressure, only a door she didn't insist be opened. Alana kept the card in her coat pocket, unread, for 3 days. She didn't rush. That was never her style. She returned to her old neighborhood in Brooklyn, walking familiar streets where she once broke up fights and handed out food during night shifts. Some people remembered her. Others had already moved on. In places like that, loyalty had limits, but memory didn't. By the end of the week, Alana found herself at a small diner on Fulton Street, waiting. Niles arrived exactly on time. This time, she brought a file. Inside were records, transcripts, pieces of a picture Alana had once tried to sketch herself but had been stopped short. Names she recognized, Numbers that matched stories she'd heard in whispers. Promotions linked to campaign contributions. Training programs bypassed. Ethics complaints that vanished mid-process. None of it screamed criminal. All of it pointed to something worse, a system that no longer needed rules to protect itself. Alana didn't say much as she flipped through the pages. Her face didn't move, but her breath changed rhythm slower, then deeper. She paused at one name, a familiar one, Lieutenant Malcolm Wade. Her former partner, her former love. She placed the folder down. "I need to be clear," she said. "This isn't about revenge. I'm not looking to ruin lives." Niles nodded. "That's not what we're asking. What we need is someone who understands the silence, someone who can move inside it." The silence. That was the word. Because the most dangerous thing in Alana's department hadn't been loud corruption. It was the quiet transactions, the knowing glances, the promotions no one questioned because they came with enough charm, enough distance from scandal. Alana knew the terrain not because she had studied it, but because she had walked it. Every day. Watching who disappeared and who climbed. And how often those were the same people. She asked for time. Niles gave her a week. During that week, Alana stayed in Harlem, living in a modest second-floor apartment above a barber shop. No official contact. No badge. She walked to a small gym every morning, made her own meals, read old policy manuals, and re-watched body cam footage from her old cases, not to remember what she'd done, but to remember why she'd started. The law was still in her. But trust. That was another matter at the end of the week. She sent a one-line text to a burner phone Niles had given her. "I'm in, but I do it my way." There was no answer, just a knock the next morning. A plain envelope. Inside, a simple set of instructions. She didn't hesitate this time. The work wouldn't be clean. It wouldn't be fast. But it would be hers. Alana returned to the same department that had quietly shut its doors on her. This time, she came through the front. Not in uniform. Not in protest. But as someone forgotten. Assumed to be out of the game. Word had spread that she'd taken a civilian job. Some thought she'd moved away. No one questioned her return, mostly because no one thought it mattered. She volunteered to help with community outreach programs, requested access to public archives, and offered to consult on old unsolved files. It was a clever move, presented as a former cop still caring about the city. What they didn't see was that every file she opened wasn't about what had been solved, but what had been buried. She tracked dates, names, funding flows. Most of it was quiet work. No confrontations, no alarms, but a pattern emerged. Certain promotions always followed certain donations. Some officers got assigned to safer precincts right after attending private gatherings. Alana didn't accuse. She observed. And in every room she entered, she listened more than she spoke. That, she had learned, was where the truth often waited. 2 months into her quiet return, Alana was approached by a younger officer in a precinct hallway. Nervous, late 20s, new badge. He asked to speak privately. In a quiet corner of the records room, he leaned in. "They said if I wanted to move to investigations, I'd need to support the leadership campaign this fall," he said. Not a lot, just a show of good faith. He looked scared, not just of being overheard, but of believing this was normal. Alana didn't react with outrage. She simply asked, "Did they name a number?" He nodded. 1,500. Cash. That number didn't surprise her. It had come up before, but now it came with a face. She passed the information to Niles the next morning. Hidden inside a cafeteria napkin was a small recording device. Within 2 weeks, the young officer agreed to wear it during an informal meeting with a departmental liaison. The recording confirmed what many suspected, but few could prove. Not just a rogue actor, but a culture. A structure that rewarded quiet compliance. Alana knew the moment would come. She just didn't expect it to feel so hollow. Malcolm Wade showed up at the gym one morning, not angry, not ashamed, just tired. He sat beside her on a bench outside the weight room. "You're back," he said. She nodded. "I heard things." He paused, not looking at her directly. "I know what you're doing." Alana didn't ask how. She already assumed Niles had planned for that possibility. Malcolm went on. "I never thought I was hurting anyone. I did what everyone else did. And I still worked hard." She didn't interrupt. "If this takes me down," he said, "I just hope you remember I was the one who stayed behind when you left. It wasn't a threat. It was a wound, something she could neither comfort nor erase. You stayed behind," she answered, "but not with me." That was the last thing they said to each other. Some stories don't need closure. They just need honesty. Alana met Chief Drexel in a bar downtown. She had set the meeting carefully, through a casual contact who owed her a favor. Drexel didn't suspect anything. He believed she was tired, looking for a way back in. She played her part. "I know I burned bridges," she told him, "but I also know things are never really written in ink." Drexel smiled. "Good officers always find their way home," he said, "especially the smart ones." He didn't ask her to prove loyalty. He didn't mention her past accusations. But what he did say, between bites of steak and cautious sips of whiskey, was far more valuable. He spoke of the need to streamline loyalty, to filter ambition, and support those who show respect with more than just words. Alana stayed composed. She asked no leading questions, but the recorder in her purse caught every sentence. When Drexel raised his glass, she mirrored him. And in that moment, she understood this wasn't about one man, one scandal, or even one department. It was about a code unspoken, but widely followed, a culture built not on laws, but permissions granted in the dark. That night, she walked away with the final piece, and for the first time in months, she felt the weight begin to shift, not off her shoulders, but onto theirs. The hearing room wasn't crowded, but the silence inside it felt pressed at every edge. Senior staff sat across from a federal review panel, eyes steady, expressions controlled. Chief Marcus Drexel occupied the center seat. His uniform crisp, collar sharp, no sign of unease on his face. He was practiced, as most leaders in his position are. He knew how to appear accountable without ever sounding responsible. Then the door opened quietly, and Alana Brooks stepped inside. She wasn't in uniform. No badge, no visible agency affiliation, just a gray blazer, flat shoes, and a folder in her hands. Some heads turned. A few blinked in recognition. Most didn't react at all. The chairperson of the review looked over the prepared documents. "Ms. Brooks," she said calmly, "you've been listed as a supplemental witness in this inquiry. Are you prepared to speak?" Alana nodded once. Her voice didn't shake when she began. She didn't lead with accusation. She led with numbers. In the past 20 months, she said, There have been 17 promotions inside this department that fall outside the guidelines established in 2021. Of those, 12 can be traced to personal donations, private endorsements, or unexplained adjustments to eligibility requirements. She passed forward printed charts, names redacted, but evidence clear. The room stayed still. Then came the voice recordings. Clips, short and exact, played through a speaker. No wild confessions, just fragments, small, precise phrases pulled from months of quiet work. Sometimes loyalty speaks louder than credentials. We don't always need procedure to know who deserves to lead. It's not about breaking rules, it's about knowing which ones bend. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. What they revealed was a pattern, a system that operated with plausible deniability, but knew its boundaries too well to be accidental. Then, a longer clip. Chief Drexel's voice. "We can't waste time on people who don't get how the real world works. You reward loyalty with opportunity. That's how this city moves forward." He didn't sound angry. He sounded like someone explaining gravity. And that, Alana understood, was the most dangerous part. Drexel's expression didn't change during the playback. He folded his hands, waited. When the clip ended, he asked to respond. "We're talking about culture," he said evenly, "not crimes. What I've done, if anything, is what leadership requires, making decisions when policies fail to reflect real conditions. I never asked for anything illegal. I never demanded money. I supported people who support the department." He paused, met the review panel's gaze. If that's grounds for censure, then maybe we need to review the rules, not just the people following them. Some in the room nodded, subtly, not in agreement, but in recognition. The defense wasn't a deflection. It was an argument rooted in the structure of the very system being questioned. That was the twist. This wasn't about uncovering a single corrupt officer. It was about confronting a truth many weren't ready to say aloud when loyalty becomes the currency of advancement. Accountability turns negotiable. Alana didn't push back. She didn't need to. Her testimony wasn't built to destroy reputations. It was designed to reveal a mechanism, a pattern repeated too often to be coincidence, yet always subtle enough to survive inspection. What came next wasn't dramatic. There were no arrests in the room, no dramatic exits, just a slow unraveling of control questions asked with new weight, documents reviewed with different eyes, and a tone that shifted from deference to scrutiny. Over the following weeks, the ripple effect widened. Officers previously dismissed for performance concerns requested re-evaluations. Training procedures were paused and reviewed. An anonymous ethics hotline saw a 30% rise in calls. None of this was flashy. All of it mattered. Drexel was placed on administrative leave, not fired, not disgraced, just moved out of rotation while the investigation deepened. He gave no interviews. He issued a statement about cooperation and transparency. Behind closed doors, his supporters began to distance themselves. Quietly. Alana didn't celebrate. She went back to the quiet apartment above the barbershop. No promotions. No medals. She did the laundry, walked to the corner store, read case law on her tablet. Occasionally, she'd get a text from Niles, short, to the point. One said, "We needed the spark. You gave it oxygen." One night, a former academy trainee, now a patrol officer, called her out of the blue. "I saw your hearing," the voice said. "It made me rethink staying, but it also made me realize maybe this place changes if the right people don't leave." Alana didn't offer advice. She just listened. And in that call, in that hesitant voice on the other end, she heard what the real win was. She hadn't taken the system down. She hadn't burned it to the ground. She'd made it visible. And sometimes, that's where reform begins, not in the fire, but in the light. 1 year later, Alana Brooks stood in front of a class of Academy cadets, not as a guest of honor, not with a title to announce. She wore a simple navy jacket, slacks, and a worn leather notebook. The instructor had invited her quietly. After a shift in curriculum, made space for ethics storytelling alongside firearms drills and procedure exams. The cadets, most in their early 20s, watched with curiosity. Some had heard whispers. Others had no idea who she was. That didn't matter. She began without preamble. "I didn't come here to tell you what to do," she said. "You'll learn rules, memorize statutes, pass exams. What I want to give you is something harder to carry a reason to question when those rules get quiet." She didn't mention Drexel. She didn't name anyone involved. What she spoke about was more difficult, the space between integrity and acceptance. The moments when doing the right thing doesn't feel brave, it feels alone. Alana described a culture that didn't wear corruption like a badge, but hid it in polite favors, implied debts, and the slow erasure of dissent. "No one ever told me to stay quiet," she said. "They just made sure I had fewer reasons to speak." A few cadets shifted in their seats, not out of discomfort but recognition. They had seen similar silences in smaller ways, in training rooms, in ride-alongs, in nods that meant nothing official, but everything unofficial. She closed her notebook without reading from it. "You don't have to be loud to be heard," she said. "But if you choose to see something wrong and say nothing, you're not neutral, you're participating." The room stayed still for a beat too long. Then the instructor nodded slowly. The lesson ended without applause. That, too, felt right. Outside the building, Alana stood for a moment beneath the gray sky, breathing in air thick with city noise. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt anchored. What had happened wasn't justice in the way headlines imagined it. It was deeper than that, a slow correction of weight, a realignment of responsibility. Nothing grand, just honest work. Later that week, she walked past her old precinct. She didn't go in. There was no ceremony waiting. But she saw something that made her stop, a poster in the entryway announcing a new ethics liaison program. Small, almost understated. But there it was. She smiled once quietly, not from satisfaction, but from understanding. This kind of progress didn't happen with noise. It happened with persistence and patience. Alana never called herself a reformer. She just chose not to disappear. In a profession where silence had often been mistaken for strength, she'd given it a new shape, one that others could choose to follow, or not. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a win. It looks like a presence that refuses to leave, like a light that doesn't demand to be seen, but makes it harder to look away. That was enough. That was everything.